I'm working my way through all the Final Fantasy games because that Magic the Gathering set is making me do that. I have finished 8, I have finished 1, I have finished 3, I will not touch 2 because I love myself, and I'm halfway through 4 right now, so you can probably guess who we're going to be doing a commander deck on today. As a kid, I heard the mantra over and over again on the internet that Final Fantasy II was actually Final Fantasy IV. And as a result, I really wanted to play this game that Japan decided that we needed to play before 2 and 3. I had already played 3 by the time that I got my hands on 4, because there was a Nintendo DS remake. And of course, the version of 4 that I would play would be a Game Boy Advance version that the data would get corrupted in. So I ended up playing again and playing through as much of the game as I could get through on the Nintendo DS and fell in love with the characters. But there's one character in particular that I absolutely adore more than ever, and it is this one right here, Rydia. Throughout the course of the game, you play as Cecil the Dark Knight, and you end up doing all kinds of horrible things to multiple people, and you start to slowly recognize that you are on the wrong side of every conflict. The final straw ends up happening when you and your best friend Kane go out and handle one more mission for the king. A mission that has explosive results for everyone. Just spoiler alert, you end up killing almost everybody in this village called Mist, and more importantly, before you ever even got to this village, you actually killed the mother of a character you would end up recruiting into your party. This would be the mother of Rydia, a child who really did not have a whole lot of power at this stage of the game and even develops a fear of fire magic as a direct result of you burning down her entire village. Kane ends up suggesting that you kill her, and you stop him because killing a child is just one step too far. Throughout the game, she accompanies you and starts to see you change as a person as multiple just absolutely terrible events happen around her. Eventually, she gets thrown off of a boat and swallowed by Leviathan because, of course, just have terrible things happen to children all the time. There are so many bad things that happen to people in this game, I swear. She does end up joining the party again later as an adult because after getting swallowed by Leviathan, she spends time in the world of summons and just becomes a much stronger individual. She loses her access to white magic, gains access to all kinds of powerful summons, and becomes an important and integral part of your party from then on. She's honestly the emotional centerpiece of a lot of the game, along with the main character Cecil, who goes on his own quest to become a paladin instead of a dark knight who's doing all the terrible things for the kingdom. Ultimately, as a kid and as an adult, the idea of this adoptee who ends up being with effectively a Vegeta-style character who ended up doing so many terrible things, her story just really resonated with me a lot, especially considering that I love characters in Dragon Ball who end up being awful, terrible, even genocidal people who end up becoming better people as the story progresses. That's a lot of what happens in Final Fantasy IV. Not everybody, I'd argue most people in this game start off on the wrong side of every conflict and all end up having to become much better people throughout the journey. So, all of that preamble to say, I am incredibly excited to start building with some of the Final Fantasy IV characters now, and we're going to be starting with Rydia, my favorite one from 4. As I said, today's commander is going to be Rydia, Summoner of Mist, and we're not doing a $15 deck today, we're doing a $20 deck, and I will also give you another fair warning. This deck is very variable when it comes to power. Depending on what summon or saga you get out, that will determine how much power this deck can output. So just be warned, you won't always have the same experience every time. Now, for Rydia, she has a fantastic set of abilities. On the one hand, whenever you play a land, you get to loot, discarding a card and drawing a card, which is already a very powerful ability, but she can then summon any Saga card from your graveyard by throwing a finality counter on it as long as you're willing to spend X, where X is the mana value of that card. This means that you can make sure that your Sagas pull double duty and you can discard Sagas away without having to worry too much about about it. But there is an important thing for the core strategy of this deck you need to note. There is a card that will allow us to continually use Rydia's abilities without having to worry about finality counters. We just need to get it out as early as possible. Enter Nesting Grounds, a utility land that allows us to move a counter from one permanent onto another permanent. We are going to be using this to throw the finality counters from Rydia's cards over to our opponent's creatures instead. And since we're going to be doing that, every time we lose one of our summons, they will go back into our graveyard, allowing Rydia to re-summon them again. In order to get Nesting Grounds out, we are going to have to use cards like Ulven Walled Hydra and Sylvan Scrying and World Map in order to rip this card out of our library as fast as possible. So that is our priority one if you have the ability to. Also, because we are playing a deck that has so much counter manipulation with the Sagas and the finality counters, let's also add in Proliferation from Thirsting Roots and Contagion Clasp. Both of these will allow us to proliferate, which will increase the amount of counters on anything on our board. Do bear in mind, though, we don't select the counters we proliferate, we select the card we proliferate counters on. So make sure to move that finality counter away from your creature before you proliferate, otherwise you're just going to have a doubly exiled creature. Thirsting Roots also allows us to sculpt our hand with a basic land if we do not need the proliferation that quickly. We also want to make sure we have more ways to recur than just what Rydia is doing, so let's have a Unnatural Restoration, a proliferation card that can also put a permanent card into our hand, Mending of Dominaria, which can put creature cards, aka our summons, back into our hand, and can even put all of our lands back onto the battlefield. The Acer Escaped Valhalla is another interesting card. It lets us exile a permanent from our grave, and then after a couple turns, it will put that permanent and the Acer back into our hand. The Binding of the Titans makes every player mill 3 cards, and then we exile 2 cards from target graveyards, and then we can return a creature or land card from our graveyard to our hand at the end. We can use this to make sure that reanimation players lose some of their important pieces, and we can get our important pieces back. Speaking of our important pieces, let's go over some of the summons in our deck, beginning with one of the reasons why the deck is $20. Summon Titan. I wanted to include as many of the good summons as I could at our price point, so that means we do have to make some concessions on price. This allows us to mill 5 cards, then return all lands from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Then we can make another creature get +X/+X, where X is the number of lands we control, meaning that we can use this to close out games pretty well. He's also a 7/7 Reach Trampler to begin with, which is fantastic. Then we have Kajuta. This can deal 3 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures. Then it can make 3 creatures unable to block. Great for swinging in. And then its final ability allows us to discard a card, draw 2 cards, and then whenever we discard a card this way, we deal damage equal to that card's mana value to every opponent, burning people out. Then we have Summon of the Magus Sisters, a boss fight I just finished in 4 that I hated, but it allows us to randomly select between the combined 3 powers abilities, either putting 3/1/1 counters on a creature, putting a shield counter on a creature, or fighting with a creature. Then we have the Esperama. This deals damage equal to the number of non-creature, non-land cards we have in our graveyard to a creature and opponent controls, and then it will give all of our wizards 1/0. Mostly this is here because it is another summon the deck can utilize. GF Cerberus allows us to multiply instants or sorceries we would cast. We have 18 total instants and sorceries in this deck for Cerberus to multiply. Fenrir searches our deck for a land and then allows us to draw a card later on. Then we have Summon Bryneldir. Bryneldir says we can exile the top card of our library, and then we can play that, or we can just put a lore counter on this Saga if we want to play a card. And it says when we next cast a spell this turn, we can give it haste. Boseiju Reaching Skyward is not technically a summon, but it does flip into a creature, so we're going to go ahead and call it a summon here. Searches our library for 2 basic forests, then puts a land from our graveyard on top of our library, then allows us to create the Branch of Boseiju, which has 1/1 for every land we control. GF Ifrit allows us to loot twice and then get mana twice before dying. He's also the first summon we get in Final Fantasy VIII. Then we have the Fat Chocobo, a largely useless device in all the classic Final Fantasies, where they used to have limited inventory and now they don't, and the Fat Chocobo was an inventory storage system. Now, though, it's just a summon from later Final Fantasies. It will make a Chocobo bird, and then it can give creatures we control trample until end of turn. Shattered States Era is another card that flips into a creature, but it allows us to gain control of a creature, then give our creatures 1/0, and then transform into a creature, making it a pseudo summon. Our main core goal is going to be to get these summons out and repeatedly punch our opponents in the nostrils with them until they bleed out the butt. That said, let's go ahead and talk about draw power so that we can get enough cards in our hand to make that strategy function at all. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the content, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps me out in the algorithm. That said, if you want to pick up this deck and any other deck, please consider using my mana pool link in the description. Just head to the description of any video and there's a bunch of links you can click there. Obviously, the deck list for whatever deck you are looking at, and then you can even pick up a channel playmat if you want to rep the channel at any point. And then, of course, there is that mana pool link where you can pick up any of your singles or sealed product, and it will help out the channel a ton. For tolerating me throwing an advert break in the middle of here and trying to turn this into something more than just a tiny hobby on the side for me in terms of YouTube. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. Let's get back to the video. Obviously, the first card we got to talk about for draw is going to be Rydia herself, since she does have that looting ability, but we want to have other ways to draw as well. Vault 21 House Gambit allows us to discard a card to draw a card twice. Parting of the Ways lets us impulse draw the top 5 of our deck. Well, it's not really impulse draw because it throws them out and then it puts time counters on them so that we will end up casting them all eventually for free. It, along with Proliferation, should be decent enough for us to dig through those cards. Harmonize lets us draw 3 cards. Veronica allows us to utilize the cards we would discard and basically get junk tokens when we do, which allows us to impulse draw more. Containment Construct lets us use the cards we discard, actually use them. We can exile them and play them if we want. Then we have Conspiracy Theories, which allows us to do the same thing. If we discard cards with Rydia, we can then play those cards. And then we have the Invasion of Kaldheim, a wheel that allows us to also, well, have an ability where if we discard a land card, we can exile the top card of our library to dig further into our deck. Elvish Archivist, Enchantress's Presence, and Viridian Enchantress will draw a card whenever enchantments touch the board. And Esper Origins lets us surveil 2 and gain 2 life, but if we cast this from the grave, which we can easily do with its flashback cost, it will turn into the Esper Madian, which allows us to reveal the top card of our library. If it's a permanent, put it in our hand. Then we get to ramp. Then we get to grab all of our creatures and give them 2/2 and trample until end of turn. Not all of these are traditional draw, but all of them will let us dig through our deck at variable rates so that we can get all the important pieces out to win the game. That said, let's go ahead and talk a little more about removal, and we've got a lot of that in this deck. We are running a 19-card removal and interaction package. A lot of cards here. Some of these do pseudo board wipes as well, so it's all just kind of mixed into here right now. We have the Alchemist Greetings to deal 4 damage to a creature, but it's got a madness cost, so we can cast this for 2 if we discard it with Rydia. Then we have Raw and the Implicit Maze, dealing 2 damage to every creature and planeswalker our opponent's control. It also allows us to discard a card and then exile the top 2 of our library if we do. And then we get to make the Spellgorger weird, which isn't super important, but we do have access to it. Violet Eruption deals 4 damage divided as we choose among any number of targets, but it's got madness, so we can discard it with Rydia to get it. Volt Charge deals 3 damage to any target and then proliferates. Abrade can deal 3 damage to a target and then blow up an artifact instead if we choose that. Decimate allows us to blow up an artifact, creature, enchantment, and a land. Fiery Temper deals 3 damage to any target, but it's got madness, so we can cast it when we throw it away with Rydia. Orchard of the Hidden Ones deals 4 damage to any target, then it makes 2 assassins, and then if any assassin we control attacks, we get to make more assassins. The Carnivorous Canopy blows up an artifact, enchantment, or a creature with flying, and if the card's little, we get to proliferate. Clash of Icons allows us to either do lore countery things, or we get to have a creature we control fight. Waking the Trolls can get rid of problematic lands. We are a combat deck, so get rid of Maze of Ith and Glacial Chasm as fast as possible. Canker Bloom can either proliferate or blow up artifacts or enchantments. The Flux blows up anything with 4 damage and then gives us Impulse Draw. Insidious Fungus can be destruction or ramp. Stomp Stomp is an MDFC that allows us to have a creature deal damage equal to its power to another creature, and of course, it is a land on the backside if need be. The Elder Dragon Dragon. War deals 2 damage to each creature and each opponent. Then it allows us to discard any number of cards and draw that many cards. Then it will make a dragon. Heritage Reclamation can blow up an artifact, enchantment, or get rid of a thing in the graveyard at instant speed. Arnie Slays the Troll allows us to have a creature fight, and then it gives us mana, and then gives us life. And the Arakoan War can gain control of a creature, and then it has a board wipe strapped to the final part of the saga. And that's it for our removal and interaction package. All that's left to talk about is going to be mana, which, hey, that's the easy part. So let's get into that. As I mentioned previously, we need World Map and Sylvan Scrying for land selection, but we are also going to be running some basic cards to get lands out of our deck. Search for Tomorrow, Font of Fertility, Sakura Tribe Elder, Wayfarer's Bauble, and Diligent Farmhand all sacrifice themselves in order to give us a land out of the deck. Well, I say that, but Search for Tomorrow does not do that. Search for Tomorrow allows us to cast it for 1, and then suspend it, and then get it on a couple turns later, so we actually can use this very, very early. With a 2-mana commander, having 1 mana ramp is really important because it lets you sequence really well. Then we have the Weatherseed Treaty. This lets us search our library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, then it makes a Saproling token, and then a creature gets XX until end of turn, where X is the number of basic lands we have. Really, this is just a saga that can grab a land out of our deck. We already mentioned Uvenwald Hydra as a way to get any land out of the deck, most likely Nesting Grounds. Rampant Growth to search our library for a basic. And finally, a Wild Growth, another way to just play a 1-mana ramp spell so that we have access to ramp before we get our 2-mana commander out on the board. Then for lands, we have 11 forests and 10 mountains, and for our dual lands, we have the tapped land of Sheltered Thicket and Temple of Abandon, since we really do want to have access to that scry early and that ability to cycle out if we get mana flooded, and a Wooded Ridgeline as another mountain forest to search out of our deck if you end up adding in cards like Nature's Lore, just easier to get these out. We also have the tapped land of Gruul Turf to reuse utility lands, or itself if we want to have a repeatable way to use Rydia's ability. The untapped lands of Game Trail, Command Tower, Cinder Glade, and Exotic Orchard, and Mossfire Valley, so that we can mana sequence pretty easy. We do have a landfall ability on the commander, so let's run a lot of fetching lands. Evolving Wilds, Ash Barrens, Terramorphic Expanse, Promising Vein, Escape Tunnel, Myriad Landscape, and Shire Terrace. 6 of these can crack themselves to get lands out of our deck at variable rates, and the Ash Barrens is just one of the best budget ways to fix your mana early. And then for utility lands, we have a Kessig Wolf Run to make one of our summons nice and big, the aforementioned Nesting Grounds to make sure our summons do not go away permanently, and a Mosswort Bridge to give us access to free summoning mechanics later in the game if need be. And that does it for everything in the deck. All that's left to do now is show you how to play with one of my favorite Final Fantasy girls. Alright, looking at our opening hand, we have no ramp, but we have an Ash Barrens and an Escape Tunnel, so we can utilize our commander's ability a lot. So let's keep it, play a forest, tap it, crack the Ash Barrens out of our hand, put a mountain in our hand, and then pass our turn. Moving on to the next turn, let's play that mountain, tap 2, get Rydia out on the board, and then pass to our opponents. Moving into the next turn, let's play an Escape Tunnel that allows us to draw a card and discard a card. Let's discard the Waking of the Trolls. And I think the next thing we do is we crack the Escape Tunnel. We go into the deck, view library. We have a forest in hand, so let's get a mountain onto the battlefield. That allows us to draw a card and discard a card. We'll discard this Origin of the Hidden Ones because we can use it very soon. And then let's tap 2 and let's cycle away this Sheltered Thicket to draw a card. We can put it back on our board with the Mending of Dominaria later. Moving into the next turn, let's Containment Construct. But I'd rather play with real cardboard right now. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna play this Exotic Orchard, drawing us a card, discarding this forest. Going into our grave, we're gonna use Rydia. 1, 2, 3, 4. Why would we discard the forest? What am I doing? Discard the Flux, and then use the Flux to blow up a creature on an opponent's board. Early enough, that needs to happen. We've killed an important card from their board, and now we get Impulse Draw for the next few turns. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Moving into the next turn, boom, we get to exile the top card of our library and use it if we want. Ooh, a Binding of the Titans. That could be useful. Let's see. What do we want to do here? Let's see what all of our options are. Let's play the forest, drawing a card and discarding the Mending of Dominaria. We can use our commander to utilize that card, but I don't think that's super necessary. Maybe it's just play the Containment Construct and then play the Binding of the Titans to mill 1, 2, 3 to get our graveyard filled up a little more. Maybe that's the move. Maybe that's what we do. And then we move on to the next turn. Turn 6 is here. We get Summon Fat Chocobo, and the Flux does the Unnatural Restoration. Ooh, we could use this. This is exile the top 2 card, or exile 2 cards from a graveyard. Don't need to worry about that just yet. Do we use this? I think we can do it with Fat Chocobo, right? But we don't care about that. Let's get a land out. Let's get a land out. Let's see what happens when we get a land out. Woodline Ridge draws us a card, discards the Fat Chocobo, and then we'll pay 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's use... we don't even need to use Rydia for this. We discarded the Chocobo. We can just play it because of the Containment Construct. And now it's not going to have haste, but we're not going to lose it when we want to use it later. So, yeah, that's good. And let's make sure we have counters tracked on this thing. It's exiled 2 cards for us. We can play the card this turn, which unfortunately means we're not going to be able to use this Unnatural Reclamation. So it's just gone. That's fine. That's fine. Moving into the next turn, this will put a creature or a land from our graveyard to our hand. Do we even have any in here that we care about? I guess we just get that forest back. Why not? But that goes away. We draw a card, Insidious Fungus, and then we exile this Kessig Wolfrun. I'll play the Kessig Wolfrun, and then that's going to allow us to draw a card and discard a card. We'll discard this forest. And Chocobo, creatures we control gain trample until end of turn. So the Chocobo can just punch somebody in the nose. That's probably fine. I don't hate that. But we also need better options right now. So why don't we pay 1 to get this Diligent Farmhand out, and pay 2 to sacrifice him to go into our library and get a new land out onto the battlefield, which will trigger Rydia once more, drawing us a card. There's real cardboard. There's real cardboard. It will make us lose some creatures, but it might set our opponents back a lot. So we'll discard Elder Dragon War, sacrificing our commander and the Containment Construct, but guaranteeing that our opponents lose lots of important cards when we get the Elder Dragon War out, and we get to add a counter to it. Boom. Okay. That hurt a little bit to do, but it's not the worst thing in the world because we've got plenty of mana. We move into the next turn. Chocobo gives our creatures the thing. We get the last of the exiles here. Search your library for a basic land card. Neat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's get Rydia back out. Let's play this forest, drawing us this card and discarding this Violent Eruption. We then get to pay 1, 2, 3, casting the Violent Eruption to blow up any number of things we need. Elder Dragon War also says we can discard any number of cards rather than many cards. We actively chose not to do that because I'm an idiot. Let's rewind just a smidge, discarding that many cards to draw this many cards, just so we have it. We don't get anything from Rydia off of that, but we do get that. We have a Conspiracy Theorist in hand now, and an Insidious Fungus. I think it's just get the Conspiracy Theorist out, right? So we have access to it. And then next turn, the Flux goes off, Summon Chocobo goes off, and this will make a 4/4 dragon, and this goes into exile. So let's go ahead and get that dragon, or it's a Troll Warrior? No, it's dragon. Dragon comes out, Conspiracy Theorist is here. Neato, neato, neato. We are in turn 9. We've controlled the board a little bit, not as much as I would like. We are kind of where most games would be getting to end game. So let's go ahead and play this Mountain to draw a card and discard. You got to be a non-land for that to work. We'll discard this Decimate, and then we'll... No. We're going to discard the Invasion of Kaldheim. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to cast the Invasion of Kaldheim to get a fresh hand, because this hand is rather slow right now. I want some summons. There we are. There's a summon. 1, 2, 3. Summon Titan. Boom. That makes us use that. Milling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Summon Titan's out. We have access to him and the dragon. And we can play Esper Origins next turn. Okay, cool. Moving to the next turn. Bop. Let's go ahead and play Mosswort Bridge as our land for the turn. We have access to it still. So, 1, 2... actually, no, that does not happen. I'm dumb. I am dumb. There's a thing that happens before that. Summon Titan will return all lands from our graveyard to the battlefield. That gives us 8 tapped lands, and then it makes us draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we get to discard again, and we have to bounce a land back to our hand. So we'll go ahead and call it This Mountain Goes Back to our hand because of the Gruul Turf, and we'll just discard the Temple of Abandon. Okay, Summon Titan's here. We can actually make Summon Titan make this dragon hit somebody for big. Maybe that's the final thing we do. Let's play the Mosswort Bridge, drawing us a card and discarding a card. We played the Summon Titan just regularly, so I'm sure it doesn't hurt to just... We just do Carnivorous Canopy? Maybe that's the move. Blow up a small thing, and then... Yeah, we'll just blow up a small thing with a Carnivorous Canopy. Proliferating the Summon Titan. Adding 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Adding 18, 18 to this dragon. And now it's going to be able to punch somebody for 22. And then we've got an Insidious Fungus, so we can do... We can do Decimate to clear the way a little bit. Decimate to clear the way, and then we'll do Stump Stomp so that the dragon fights something. And then we'll pay 1 to get the Insidious Fungus on the board, so only our Abrade was misused. The Summon Titan is gone, but we can summon again with Rydia. So now the dragon swings for 22 at somebody, and we've wiped out, like, 6 or 7 permanents? I'm okay with that. Like, that's not bad. That's not bad. It's not the most impressive thing that I've done with a Magic deck, but, like, that's a fun sequence. I don't hate that. Maybe if we added a bit more of a budget to the deck, though, we could give it a bit more oomph. Let's see what that would look like. If you're upgrading the deck, we need to solve one of the main problems the budget version has, and that is a lack of sagas to utilize that are good. The strongest saga you could throw in here is going to be Summon Bahamut, a 9/9 creature with a game-winning ability strapped to his backside, draw, and the ability to blow up multiple permanents. If you are building Rydia and you have the ability to put Bahamut in, he is a no-brainer to put in, but do be warned, he does cost a bit of money. You can also play Monument to Endurance, which allows you to turn all the discards from Rydia into burn and ramp and draw. Again, this one is an auto-include if you plan on building her. We can also make the draw package of the deck a bit more stable with Eidolon of Blossoms and Setesian Champion. Another way to solve the problem of not getting enough good enchantments in the hand is by making sure that you dig through your deck much, much faster. Speaking of good enchantments, let's go ahead and put Fable of the Mirror Breaker in the deck, because the Fable of the Mirror Breaker allows us to not only make a goblin that is useful for multiple things, and not only allows us to discard and draw, which the deck already wants to do, but it can exile and turn into another creature that you need to be very, very aware of if you play Pioneer. The Reflection of Kiki-Jiki can make a token copy of any non-legendary creature you control. Notably, all Saga creatures are non-legendary, despite being legendary in their own respective games for some reason. Again, another card that I think will cause your deck to be way more powerful is Fable of the Mirror Breaker. If you're building Rydia, just pick one up. I would argue the deck does not function anywhere near as well without some of these cards. As I've been playtesting it, even with the $20 limit, it is lacking some very, very powerful oomph. I'd also put in Gladylus Ametitia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he's another Ulvenwald Hydra that allows you to give creatures more power if need be. Let's also put in Summon Esper Valgarmonda. Valagarmonda. There we go. Those words. It's a flying haster. It's mostly here so we have a higher density of enchantments. And then we have There and Back Again, which can make a Smog token, another enchantment to give us a higher density of these cards. finally, with the ability to close out the game being problematic, let's make sure that we have two important pieces. Omnath Locus of Rage can allow us to get some of the best tokens possible for all the landfall the deck is doing as an alternate win condition, and a Power Conduit will be able to let us maneuver the counters around the board infinitely better than the, albeit somewhat clunky, Nesting Ground combo that we're working with right now. Ultimately, no matter how you build Rydia, unless you are putting in some serious money into her, she's going to be a low bracket 3 deck that has a fun gimmick, but it does not have a ton of power or oomph. If you're okay with that, then have fun building this. I enjoyed my time putting it together, as she is one of my favorite characters, but again, this is a deck that, without a little bit of extra money, is going to lack some serious power with this build. If you end up coming up with something that's a lot more powerful for the budget, then let me know in the comment section below. I would love to see what you put together. But with all that said, thank you all for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you being here, and as always, insert in the video tagline here. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I really could not do any of this without all of you. Those of you watching, and especially those of you who support me on Patreon. I wanted to go ahead and take a minute to thank all of you who do that, because with YouTube being what it is these days, I really cannot do this full time without the support from each and every one of you. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Tales of Atonement, Nixie Chan, Kiri Artemis, Limor Pinku, Love Bunny Games, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Aurora, Leela Ururaka, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fire Shard. Thank you so very much. But since you're here, why not go ahead and try watching another one? There should be one that's on the screen right now. And if you are a patron of mine, I wanted to go ahead and thank you again for all of your support. There is still a video you could press though, if you'd like. I would appreciate it just a little bit.